I'll give it a minute just to let people arrive. Great. Well, I think a few people will continue arriving for the next few minutes, but welcome to our Deadstock webinar with Stephanie. Thank you for joining SupplyCompass in Conversations with.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here to chat all things Deadstock and changing the world.
Yes, I love that, changing the world. Brilliant. So just a kind of a bit of housekeeping, there is a Q&A on the side, and I'm going to be looking at that intermittently. And rather than waiting to the end to answer your questions, I'm going to try and feed them in throughout. So please do keep them coming. If I don't answer them immediately, it may be that we're covering something later on in the conversation that might be more suitable. We will also answer questions on Insta tomorrow, and we'll be sending through a follow-up email with all of the information. And if those members in your team or you want to send it on, we'll be sending through a recording of it. So today, really, it's what we're going to talk about is, or hear about and discuss is the kind of journey, Stephanie's journey with Queen of Raw to get to this point with your Deadstock platform, how and why you started your company, and we'll then go into kind of the platform itself and the role of technology in the Deadstock space, but also we can put it in the wider context of the kind of entire design to delivery process, which I'm really excited to talk about that. Also some of the challenges, questions, I'm going to bring in some questions that we've heard from our network and community over the last few months around Deadstock, and then maybe a kind of positive look forward to what the future holds for Queen of Raw, for it within the kind of broader context and for Deadstock. So I think probably just to kind of frame the beginning of this conversation, just really a little bit around our partnership and why SupplyCompass, can't even say the name of my own company, and Queen of Raw have come together. And really from my side, we as a business have looked at Deadstock with much excitement over the last few years, but we saw the challenges in achieving and kind of integrating it into our design to delivery platform at scale. And also really enabling brands that we work with to bring it seamlessly in at the right point. So often it could be an afterthought, or it's clunky to bring Deadstock into a manual process when it's through a platform. So really the goal for our partnership, the end goal for us, is that, you know, a brand can be in a platform, source with whatever fabric they need, be it Deadstock or any other, and it's just there, easy, one click. Over to you, Stephanie, in terms of what really has drawn this partnership together.
Absolutely. This partnership has resonated so well with exactly what we're doing. I mean, the timing couldn't be more right. Of course, we are currently clearly experiencing a crisis of supply, more Deadstock and unused inventory available all over the world than ever before. And the world has woken up to these issues. That's the good news, right? And so what we at Queen of Raw do well, and our goal has always been to be able to quickly, easily, and seamlessly get all of that unused inventory from the warehouses to the web and into designers' hands. And so obviously partnering with leaders like SupplyCompass is exactly what we need to do, as we have more and more Deadstock all over the world, in Europe, in Asia. We're on every continent now, finding the right communities, the right platforms, the right partnerships to be able to give exclusive access to the materials that we find and really make it readily available to you and your community, so you can do what you do best and help with the matching and the manufacturing of these goods, so that ultimately it gets into the hands of the end consumers and they know the powerful impact that they have had by being able to use Deadstock materials and get a beautiful garment.
Great. Exciting match it is. So I think just kind of winding back a stage, I always love to understand from people who've set up businesses like yourself, like how you really got to this point now. What was your journey? I mean, pre Queen of Raw, how did you end up here?
It's a great question and a long history that actually starts 100 years ago. I won't go into the full history, but you know, the short snippet is I grew up around this industry. My great-grandfather in the 1890s came over on a ship from Austria. He landed at Ellis Island and he settled into the Lower East Side of New York, which was actually the original garment district. And as an immigrant chasing the American dream, he had to make a living, right, for himself and his family. And so what did he do? He actually found materials and supplies nearby, old fabrics and furs and things that people had brought over on the ships with them, but they weren't using anymore. And we repurposed them by hand with minimal waste and minimal toxins, because his bottom dollar depended on it. And he sold the most beautiful haute couture fashion garments to local customers. Some of his fur coats I still wear today. And I grew up hearing these stories and always knew that at some point I wanted to be able to build a business to change the world. And I had a prior startup to Queen of Raw where we invented a new leather alternative. And it hit a note in the market years ago when innovation in textiles and sustainability was just getting talked about. And as we were growing that business, I'd go to factories, mills, and warehouses and brands all over the world, and I would see all this perfectly good stuff just sitting there in warehouses collecting dust or going to be burned or sent to landfill. And yet they were still looking to purchase a sustainable leather alternative. And I was very proud of what I was doing, but I was still making something new while there was all this perfectly good stuff. And I said, you know, this doesn't make sense. To me, it just seems like a supply-demand mismatch. And how can we use technology to provide the bridge? And so that really kind of was the impetus for what is obviously now Queen of Raw. And with our SupplyCompass partnership and the vision, I truly believe we can get back to the way my great-grandfather did business, which totally made sense for people, totally made sense for planet, but it also the economics work and it makes sense for business's profit.
No, that makes, I think it's quite an exciting inflection point that we're in, particularly kind of off the back of, whilst we go through this pandemic, is there is so much fabric there that's in great quality that just needs to be able to easily find a new home.
It totally does. And I think, you know, the word dead stock, people always think of it, right, as literally dead stock, second-rate goods, scraps maybe off a cutting room floor, stuff nobody would want. But if I tell you, and as we've seen, as we've been exploring right together, the type of dead stock that would be good for the SupplyCompass community, we have seen the massive volume to the tunes of thousands to tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands and beyond yards of the most beautiful materials, all in mint condition, still sealed on rolls, right? That just is looking for a home. And I think unlocking all of that and seeing the value, this isn't dead stock. It is very much alive. And how can we together, right, put it back into the chain of supply and demand and give it a new life?
Why? This is the same thing that we experienced when we, at the start of SupplyCompass, spent 2 years living in India, and every factory we would go to, every mill, there was rolls, and we would always say, what's going to happen? They go, it will sit here for 6 months, and then, as you said, it will go to landfill, or it will go to the local market. Often it has to go to landfill because that's what the brand has demanded. But why was this kind of problem of waste? Like, how come it has got to this point before Queen of Raw, for example? Like, what were these brands and suppliers going to do with, like, what was the plan?
You're right. What was the plan? I think we had been working pre-COVID at such a fast pace, right? I mean, how quickly things needed to be made and the turnaround time and just do more and more and quicker and faster and cheaper without any real time to slow down and reflect and look at what's going on in our own businesses and whether that made economic business sense. Because at the end of the day, waste is not good for people and planet, but it costs you money. For some of our enterprise customers, this waste is like up to 15% of their bottom line in just 1 year.
No way.
Isn't that, and you know, and I always say at that volume, waste isn't just environmentally irresponsible. This is a CFO like business issue, right? And so I think for so long, they didn't pay attention to this stuff until it accumulates and accumulates. And then it becomes so massive, you don't know what to do about it. And you have no alternative. And fortunately now with this partnership, we got a great alternative for them.
And I suppose you go along and you say, look, you're trying to shave 1% of your unit cost. Well, have a look at what you're holding in terms of your waste.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of the types of, I think this is when we started having conversations, I didn't realize quite the kind of different types of businesses that you work with. Like in my mind, it was probably mills. And then maybe I didn't even understand that you were selling you were looking at reselling brands dead stock. Who do you work with and what kind of size of business?
So the beauty of kind of the way we built our solution is we've got queenofraw.com, and that is kind of our open platform and to the world. And that's great place for factories, brands, retailers, and mills who have 250 yards and under. Right. And so smaller sample yardage, we do even sell scraps off a cutting room floor by the pound if they want to, and they can sell it to anyone from a student maker, crafter, quilter to the biggest brands and retailers in the world who may be doing a limited edition line. But for the most part, it's a great place for small and medium-sized businesses. For them, there's a huge opportunity, right? We're opening up access to materials that they never had before and democratizing the system so you don't need to put in a huge minimum of 5,000 yards when you really only need 50 yards, right? What kind of sense does that make? And so if we can open up this access, it's great. But as we've been growing Queen of Raw, we've now been fortunate to be growing with enterprise customers as well, where they're not only selling the big fashion brands and retailers along with their factories and mills, they're actually turning around now and buying Deadstock. And I think that's a really powerful piece to mention because that shows just where we're going around this Deadstock. At the end of the day, these businesses have dedicated supply chains, but they need what they need, when they need it, at the right price, away from these areas that were impacted by disruption, right? And a sustainable story to tell. And Deadstock does that. So I truly think for anyone from a student and, maker and independent designer to the biggest brands and retailers in the world, this is a valuable asset that makes economic sense today more than ever to leverage.
I think your point around the kind of inclusivity, democratization of access is a really interesting one that, it's something that we've really thought about since the start. I think particularly our focus at SupplyCompass is the SME space, so businesses up to kind of 100 million pounds in revenue. But really this idea of kind of collective purchasing or, not seeing your competitor as a competitor. What are your thoughts on that? Because I think it's quite an interesting, I feel like the industry is going in an exciting direction in terms of
the
that.
industry really is. You're 100% right. I mean, the old school way of doing things, could you imagine, one brand selling materials to another? Probably not, for all the obvious reasons. But I think that the beauty of what's going on in the world today is that there's opportunity for them to rethink the old school way of doing business. And did it make sense anymore? At the end of the day, a lot of these brands and retailers are buying from the same people anyway. And if you can leverage Deadstock, like we said, with the economic benefits and the story to tell, why wouldn't you do that? And, of course, for anything truly proprietary that the brand refuses to sell, and we can talk about this later, we do have a suite of end-of-life partners and sustainable solutions for them. But more and more, as we've been unlocking all this unused inventory for these brands and their partners and their supply chain, they've been very willing and able to, want to make it available and accessible to others. And of course, they also, now that they know about it, they can even use it themselves internally with our solution, right? They know it's there, it's in one place. And
I think when you told me about that, because I think it's this idea, and this is something that we hear time and time again when we talk to bigger businesses, is that your menswear team in one country is not talking to your women's wear team in another country, and you may be buying the same fabric. And this internal conversation, internal sharing of resources is really interesting.
You're 100% right. And I know we were talking about this earlier offline, and I'm sure you see this all the time. They know now more than ever that they need to digitize their supply chains and their information. But when you say that to a company, especially an older company with an old school way of doing things, the idea of overhauling their entire business and supply chain, digitally in overnight, it's daunting to say the least. And a lot of them get stuck in the mud. And you don't end up knowing how to do or go anywhere or do anything. You've got all these different old systems talking or not talking to each other and different information, right? And it doesn't work. So to me, Deadstock and waste today is the perfect place to start with digitizing your supply chain, because you can only grow up and down the chain from there and connect the dots. But here's a way to start today, being a little more digital and a little more sustainable. It'll save and make you money, and then you can build towards the supply chain tomorrow, which I know we'll talk about.
No, I love that, because I think this is often we get the question, it's particularly for larger businesses, is where do you start? And I think it totally makes sense that you start in a place that's the easiest, and actually you don't have to think about it speaking to every single part of your business. So like how quick is it to kind of get set up and start using as both a brand and a supplier, I suppose?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, with all of these technology solutions, the key is to get rid of the word technology, right? And just make it a solution that is quick,
Love that.
easy, it's cost effective. Let us worry about the technology. We can still talk a little bit about it today, but let us worry about, what we do. That's what we do. And at the end of the day, it should just be a solution that makes sense for you. So for anyone who wants to be a buyer or a seller or both, it's very quick and easy. You can go to queenofraw.com. There's an apply to be a buyer, apply to be a seller button. Click a button, free to join, free to list. We just get a commission on an actual sale, so everyone's business interests are really aligned. And that was very important to us with queenofraw.com. Of course, once you're in our community, we're happy to offer additional support and tools and impact analysis, which we can talk about. But at the end, it becomes a very quick process to start. And that's our goal.
I feel like often when I'm speaking to brands, they have this kind of, their mindset towards technology has quite rightly been a little bit affected by some of the systems that they've had to use in the past, which unless, some have been custom built for their businesses and some are great, but often it's, you ask them about what, PLM and they go, oh, don't ask me. And that mentality, like you're right, we should stop talking about technology, software, and we just say that this is the solution to your problem that you're telling us about.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously I know with, the incredible platform you've built as well, there's a ton of complexity, right? To be able to go from ideation and mood boards to actually, sampling and prototyping to actually producing a collection and then distributing it, right? A ton of complexity.
Yeah.
But the way you framed it and made it, and now with us being able to kind of plug and play and automate into that, nobody needs to worry about the logistics and all of that. Let us take care of that, but you can see right at ideation, here's the dead stock available, create your mood board and SupplyCompass with it, right? And go all the way down to create. And that's what we want to do, because out there, the designers, the creators, they should do what they do best. And that is design and create and have the next most beautiful, sustainable collection.
Totally, could not agree more. Now we've got some questions coming here. I'm not ignoring them. I'm just going to actually come on to them. We're going to talk a bit more about the technology behind the Queen of Raw platform, and that actually may answer some of your questions. But then we're going to go and tackle. So please keep dropping them in there, and I will come to those in probably 10 minutes from now. So just to talk a bit more about the technology behind your platform, why was it necessary for Deadstock to have a platform like yours in the first place?
So when we looked at the problem of Deadstock years ago, my co-founder and I first started looking at this issue in 2014. And, we wondered, why has nobody paying attention to this, right? Why is this such a massive problem? It's actually like $120 billion with a B a year of unused textiles. How can nobody be paying attention to this? And we dug deeper and we realized how challenging it was to connect the dots of what was all over the world and basically map the world's dead stock. And then once you map it, how do you match it to the right buyer located near where it is, who wants that product in that quantity at that price point, right? A lot of challenges. And so we started at a Starbucks in New York, mapping out on a napkin what the solution would look like. And we realized at its core, it needed to be a platform, a global marketplace, kind of a bizarre Airbnb of fabrics, right? Where you can all come together and where we, leveraging our technology, can make the matchmaking between the buyers and the sellers. Because the quicker we can make a match, the quicker we can keep this waste out of landfill and obviously turn what would be pollution into profit for our community. And with the marketplace, there's a lot of tools like blockchain and machine learning AI that you can leverage in order to make those matches happen really well. And that's a lot of what we spent time building, because, supply chains are complicated. You know this more than anyone, right? Hundreds of steps across the globe, metric tons of water, chemicals, crops, oil, all used in the process. But if we can digitally connect the dots, map the waste, make the matches, it's really valuable. And then obviously there's a lot more now that we have this data that we can help with minimizing waste going forward. And that's very important to us.
Yeah, really interesting. So you came up with this idea of a platform. What was the first thing, the first step, the first hurdle that you knew you had to do? Because I can see where you are now and I'm thinking, how did you get here to do this?
As a startup, there are always hurdles. Clearly, every day it's about managing hurdle over hurdle, right? But
yes, it is.
So when we started, we knew we needed to get a marketplace up quickly and easily to start learning about our customers, about our community, about this dead stock. So that was one of the early things we did. We got a very bare bones MVP of a marketplace platform up there with our vision and our statement and our story and our mission and what stood behind us. And, you know, it was helpful to have my co-founders, also our CTO, and we had a creative director early on who worked with us on the vision and the storytelling and the mission. And I think that was really powerful, that kind of trifecta, to be able to get something up there and out there quickly. Don't be afraid, you know, and start learning from the customers and iterating based on what you hear. So we only had a couple of products to sell, but we saw the most massive amount of demand coming. I mean, we haven't paid barely anything in PR marketing or advertising to date, and the demand was just coming like crazy. So we knew that there was something there that people wanted access to, talking about this inclusivity, democratization, opening up and making things accessible to everybody around the world. We knew that there was something here. The challenges, the main challenge that we have had since has been around the supply. Because this stuff exists all over the world, right? It's there. We know it's out there. I've seen it firsthand, the piles and piles in the factories. But how do you get it from the warehouse to the web, right? How do you do it quickly and easily? When for some of our enterprise customers, they have up to 100,000 SKUs of unused inventory. So for a traditional marketplace, right, to be able to take a picture, drag and drop and post it to a marketplace, to do 100,000 SKUs plus, that's just not scalable. And so that's spent a lot of time in the magic behind the marketplace, building out this software and tools to help businesses automatically identify waste in their supply chain, automate the process of putting it into Queen of Raw system, and then over time collecting sustainability data and data about how to help them minimize that waste going forward. And I think to us, that's the future vision. I want with SupplyCompass to sell all the world's dead stock, right? So that there is no more waste. And that's the ultimate goal and the vision, because then everyone will be efficient with their supply chains and can do better, and we'll be proud of that.
I mean, what's so interesting is that there's often, when people talk about sustainability, the term efficiency doesn't come into the conversation enough. And a lot of it is essentially about being efficient with your resources and using stuff that's already there. And I think, I just think with Deadstock, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but has it been something you've been getting requests for from your community, and why, for those reasons, you think?
Yeah, I think we've really seen a huge uptake in a huge kind of increase in inquiries over the last 4 or 5 months. There's been a murmuring of interest in it. And I think really what we've seen when I speak to brands, and I speak daily to different brands of different sizes, is that there's a few things with Deadstock. I mean, the short lead times, the fact that you can shave 6 weeks off from design to delivery from raising of your PO to delivery. We've managed to turn collections round in, you know, from that PO to in the factory within 4 weeks because of it. That's really exciting.
It's magic. And you're right. So many people ask me, well, dead stock, it's limited. And, you know, what about sampling? Well, let me tell you, I think dead stock solves a lot of the traditional way of doing things problems, right? Because forget a sample, which is a small square of something totally unsustainable that you're shipping all over, that may or may not match the actual production run, right? Because of all these inefficiencies you just described. But with dead stock, you can cut a yard from the exact lot that your production run will come from. You can have it tomorrow, and you can make your sample or prototype. If you don't end up using it, turn around and resell that yard. And if you do, you know exactly what's available, where it's available, what the price is, you can have it the next day. And you're right. Those kinds of inefficiencies, it provides a real opportunity. And I think, you know, you've seen for so long, smaller and medium-sized brands and retailers now really understanding that. And I think the bigger the enterprise brands and retailers are catching on too. And they realize that they need to innovate in this space. Or watch out, because it's a huge opportunity for anyone out there who's a small and medium-sized brand, for sure.
I mean, definitely. And I think really for us, like the kind of the limitations often for brands we work with, you need to hit 5,000 meters of a fabric per colorway. You know, that's still significant size businesses that we speak to. That is too much for them. And the ability with Deadstock is that, you know, that you can tap in, you go, okay, well, actually, maybe I'm happy that maybe I don't get that exact shade of white that I wanted. It's an ivory. You know, I think that it's about using the limitations and seeing that as an opportunity to innovate template and design collections around that, rather than saying, I can design everything. You've been given these guardrails to design within. And I think that's more exciting as a creative challenge personally. I don't know what you think.
I mean, why wouldn't you, create inspiration? We are creating inspiration and mood boards and coming up with our designs out of what's around us, right? That is what is inspiring us. And this is a part of what's around us. And using it and leveraging it, you're totally right, as a source of inspiration and excitement and designing around it. Not only is it inspirational, but it actually makes everything quicker and easier, more efficient going down the chain. So I love when we go and talk to some of our customers and they actually have the design team in the same room with, right, the supply chain and procurement, with the financial team and who have the liabilities on the books. When everyone's in the same room and they can understand and leverage each other, it becomes so powerful.
Yeah, totally. Now I'm just going to answer some of these questions. So we'll get on to, there's a few great questions in here. So from Catherine, are the fabrics stored at Queen of Raw warehouses or at the fabric sellers, assuming the fabric seller's location? And also, how is that delivery timeline managed? Is that something that you take on, or is that?
I love that question. So when we first looked at this problem and this question, we wondered whether it made sense for us to be able to physically control the drop shipping. And when I saw the sheer volume of dead stock that was out there, I very quickly realized it doesn't make economic or sustainable sense, unfortunately or fortunately, for us to move all of this to one location and then ship it to customers. So right now, it sits in the location where it currently sits. That is why we are literally mapping the world's dead stock at the factory or the warehouse or the mill or the brand sample, wherever it sits, it can sit there. And then we map and ideally find the buyer located near where that inventory sits. So we cut down on the carbon emissions and shipping costs. But we, Queen of Raw, do want to help out and manage the process end to end. So we do take care of everything from payment processing to all the fully automated international shipping logistics. And of course, people are shipping and we are still shipping every day. We do offset the carbon emissions and the impact of shipping against the net positive impact of the sustainable fibers being rescued. And it still is a positive, but there is the negative of shipping. My ultimate dream and goal with Queen of Raw is, to build an Alibaba done right, and to find, if we've truly mapped the world's dead stock, and there is so much out there, sorry to our shipping partners, but I think in the future, you don't need to ship anything anywhere ever again, because you can find what you need right around there. And obviously that's the ultimate goal, and we want to get there.
Definitely. Now, in terms of, I think this is something that we've, had questions from brands we're working with, is quality control. Now, how do you manage quality control from someone else's fabric that hasn't been produced and QC'd by your own factory originally?
You're right. Quality control is key to this. So when we first looked at this, we knew we needed to be a managed marketplace, in as much as not just anyone and everyone can sell openly. We do have to vet and know who our sellers are. So there are processes in place where we do a verification check of our buyers and our sellers. And that is important because we want to know who our community is and that they stand behind the values that we do of working for people and for planet and making good intentions and having good initiatives, and that they are who they say they are. And so part of our software and tools that we have built allow us to manage that process and the quality very well. We can now, with our partnerships with SAP and some other inventory management systems and ERP systems, we can actually integrate directly into those systems and pull all the data in. So we know, with a certain level of deep integrity to the data because of blockchain technology and other tools, who said what when. We know what it's made of, where it came from, what testing and sustainability certifications and reports are ascribed to that particular SKU, how much was paid for, why it was dead stock in the first place. And we get that question a lot, right? Like, how do you know it's actually dead stock and someone isn't just manufacturing to sell on Queen of Raw at a discount? And
that was my next question, so that's great. You've answered it.
Yeah, no, we can actually say it was made pursuant to this order on this date and has been sitting in the warehouse for this time period, right? These are all the quality controls and the processes that we need to put in place to be able to do just that, because you're right. We're selling this stuff in the digital space and, into a global community, and putting those processes and checks in place allow us, with integrity to the data, to be able to speak behind and say it is what it said it is. Now, what's really cool about putting those processes in place is it's not only valuable to our community and the buyers and sellers, but once you as a buyer use our Queen of Raw dead stock, there's some really cool and exciting things we can do with the storytelling of that. We can actually now connect our story and the Queen of Raw journey to the QR code or the RFID thread in that finished good. So when your customers go out and buy that shirt, they can scan it and know that it was certified Queen of Raw Deadstock. It came from here. You just saved this amount of water, toxins, energy, and dollars by doing it. And that's really important too today, right? Like more than ever, and I'm sure you're seeing this with your community, everyone wants to be a part of something greater and make a difference in this world. And if any good can come out of it, it is changing the world for our kids and future generations. And that allows them to be a part of it. And I think that's really valuable and powerful and important in the storytelling. And it also allows the brand or retailer to know what happens to those materials. And at end of life, to know what the company should do with that, or the individual who purchased it should do with it at end of life. So a lot of now things we can do with connecting the dots here that we're excited to work on with you as well.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Something that we have definitely felt after, we spend a lot of time both inside and speaking to our factories and suppliers around the world. And I think this idea of like kind of slightly changing, I think, we see with our factories often they're used to going to the same suppliers and used to custom making new fabrics time and time again. How fast, or do you feel that mindset to looking to waste first as the first port of call, or at least seeing that as a really at the moment this is one way of doing things, and I think we already with our platform are trying to change that whole way of thinking, working, and it takes time to change behaviors. Do you think the supply chains are ready?
It's another great question. Obviously, when you come in and you try to innovate and disrupt in a space, you are doing just that, right? Like what you're doing. You're innovating and disrupting a traditional way of doing things, but it's because you have an eye and a vision towards a future where that is what is going to be prioritized and valuable to the world. And when we first started looking at this issue at that Starbucks in 2014, we knew about how bad this problem was. But the pain just wasn't felt enough by our community. We would go to brands and retailers and talk to them about their waste problem, right? And a lot of what we heard initially was, you can talk to our sustainability team, but we don't really have that much waste and liability on the books. And, it'd be a nice to have, but not a have to have. Well, clearly, fast forward to today, and fortunately, a lot of those no's have turned around to become yeses. That brand who thought they only had a certain amount in liability on the books, since working with us, actually has well over 15 times that in liability on the books. And not only do they have 15 times what they thought they had in waste, but they didn't realize that over the years since 2014, for every $1 worth of unsold product they had, they were actually spending up to another $1.40 on warehousing costs. So it was well more than even 15x the pain that they were feeling, and they didn't even know it. And now, like I said, if any good can come out of today, right, it's that they've woken up to these issues, and it's not a nice to have, it is a have to have. And it isn't just the sustainability team, right? It is supply chain and procurement, design team, the CFOs, everybody together to solve this massively painful problem. I think the latest McKinsey report just came out showing it's a top 3 priority for every major enterprise fashion brand and retailer. So I think we are at that tipping point. And is that what I'm sure you're seeing that as well with your business and booming and growing, that we are at this tipping point and they need and realize the value of what you've done.
Now, Dara in this chat has asked, what makes Queen of Raw different to companies like Swatch On, Fab Scrap, Sourcing District?
Yep. Love all those companies. And to me, at the end of the day, this is a massively huge problem, and it is going to take an army, right, of all of us working together to be able to solve it. And we do actually work together. Fab Scrap is an amazing partner of ours, and they leverage our technology and our tools to be able to sell their materials globally and digitally, which is not something that they were doing with their focus in New York and with their physical store. And so I think these kinds of partnerships and relationships, that's what's powerful, and where we're going to leverage each other's tools. I know what we've done really well in our technology and how it allows us to be very quick globally in the matchmaking to allow us to automate this process end to end, and ultimately over time to help brands and retailers minimize their waste streams intelligently. And that's really a lot of what we've built and where we're going. Of course, we're very known right now for our marketplace, and I want to match everything on it. But I think, yeah, that speaks to some of the power of where we want to go. But we wouldn't be here if not for those kinds of partnerships with Fab Scrap and others, and with, SupplyCompass here. And that's why we do what we do every day.
It is definitely about partnerships in this space. No one company can tackle the kind of challenges that need solving in supply chains. And I think this open collaboration, also different approaches, different mindsets of solving different parts of the problem and then linking together. But in terms of, I'm interested to learn a bit more. This is a question from Ash about kind of setting the price of dead stock. And I think this really ties in also a little bit to some initial questions we had around, I think someone also asked us here of like, well, what's stopping a factory just producing dead stock, pretending it's stock? What's differentiating dead stock from stock? And I think the price is quite tied into that, because often dead stock, am I right, is a little bit cheaper. So it's not actually necessarily in a supplier's interest to produce dead stock.
Quite right. It is not. It is definitely cheaper. With pricing, it's something we spent a lot of time researching, because this was previously, as we all know, sitting in warehouses, right, or being burned or sent to landfill. Maybe a best case scenario, some brand or retailer would actually give it to a jobber or a middleman, but they would pay them pennies, not even pennies on the dollar, literally pennies. And so it just wasn't worth any time. There was no efficiency, and there was no disclosure about what that jobber or middleman actually did with the goods, right? And so I think this is where we are able to leverage what we talked about earlier, technology, to understand what are people willing to pay in the secondary markets for like quality goods. And so it's something we scan every day. So our dead stock is automatically, by being part of the Queen of Raw solution, is entered at a discount to its original price. But of course, discounts get steeper, especially for volume and based on the urgency that the brand or retailer has to get it out of their space. So some of our stuff goes as steep as up to 80% or more off wholesale prices. So it can get very steep, but at the same time, that is still significantly valuable to the brand or retailer who before was recouping nothing and in fact spending money, right, to do something with it. So we want the brands and retailers to get the fair price for these goods. This waste is waste, but is valuable waste. And that is something we pay attention to every day. We look at what's trending, right? We work in the secondary markets on see what our customers are willing to pay. And we actually have tools that give that feedback to our customers. So much like, other marketplaces that do that, we can give guidance and suggestions as well around pricing to be as accurate and transparent as we can with it.
So what is the definition of dead stock? We probably should have covered this right at the start, compared to, because I think that the grey area between that and stock, and what's the difference in that and surplus and excess. What definition?
I think as much just like I love the S word sustainability, right? The D word dead stock, they all mean so many things to so many people. On Queen of Raw, we do take a very broad view of what is sustainable, and everything on our platform is dead stock, but we do actually sell, and I should be very transparent about this, exotics, skins, leathers, like that. To me, if it already exists and it was made pursuant to some purchase order, but they overbought or they changed a color and a style, and it's otherwise sitting in a warehouse that is going to be either sit there or be burned or landfilled, we want to rescue it. And to us, no matter the type of material and fiber, that is dead stock. So everything on our platform is just that, dead stock. However, we do have a category, for lack of a better word, called sustainable. And by that, we mean something in addition to dead stock that has some sustainability criteria to it. It's organic, recycled and repurposed in some way. It's got a certification ascribed to it, made in a fair trade factory with organic dyes with certain standards, all of that. And that's where we are as transparent as possible as well about what we know and what we can disclose about the material with certainty.
Cool. Just digesting that's really, so my question now, I feel like I'm just asking you lots of questions here, and I'd feel free to fire back, but around authenticating the fiber. So I think someone's mentioned this in the chat, and I think it's this idea of, and I think we've come across some really cool kind of infrared scanning businesses in the past where, knowing exactly the fiber composition. So for some suppliers or some people who've got desktop, how do they, if they don't have that certainty of what it is or where it's come from, can they still sell firstly through your platform?
Yes, absolutely. We say what we could say with certainty, and we do have a category called unknown, and people can go to the synthetic unknown category, and what we disclose is what we know, and what we don't know, we don't know. But what's cool about the dead stock is it's there. You can buy that yard, have it tomorrow. If you don't like it, turn around and resell it, and we do that at no charge to you to keep it in circulation. And that's the way you can test and know it better and see if it. We aren't right now independently testing the materials because we're not physically holding them all. But curious to you and what you've got now in practice in your own supply chains, in addition to the materials that you're obviously manufacturing, have you been sourcing from other partners, and how have you been verifying and certifying what it is and testing, if at all, or sampling? How has you been thinking?
I mean, just the traditional routes of you send a swatch off to a testing unit. So we kind of work with partners like SGS, and it goes to one of their labs and gets tested as part of the production process. But a lot of people don't know to build it in. I mean, more established businesses or people who've got a background in it would know to test that fabric. For certain countries, it has to be tested for certain, if it's kids wear, for example, to get into America. But I think it's this idea of, I'm really excited to see what comes in this space, a kind of scanners that you know exactly a fabric and you can just infrared test it. And I think it's being really looked at in the recycling space, so that you can tell it's really important to understand your fabric composition in order to recycle effectively.
You're so right. We've been looking at that technology as well. We've also been looking at a couple other cool things, which you may have seen, as being able to touch and feel the hand of the fabric through the phone. There is actually hardware, yes, that blows air to mimic the hand feel of the fabric. Now, it's not precise enough to the fiber level for it to be real valuable for B2B. It's a little more of a B2C right now, but it's getting there. And I think that'll be really exciting because, forget even the needing to sampling. Some of the other technologies that I'm sure you're looking at as well that are really cool is, 3D visualization and modeling, right? And we do a lot with that now, where when we have photography and video of our products, so you can understand the drape, the hand, the feel, the movement, the flow, how can we also create the CAD files of the fabric, so you can integrate it directly into your design processes, and you can take out even more steps from this. And that's a lot too, I think, of where we're going. And I'm sure you must be seeing that as well in the design process.
I definitely feel like this is, this part, the kind of digital, the kind of 3D rendering in the sampling process is something that we are exploring a lot at the moment. I think, we definitely feel at SupplyCompass, and this is not necessarily, there's lots of different schools of thought, that ultimately as a designer or a creative individual, that the need to feel your product is still there. And ultimately, if you're designing something that you're never touching and it's going into a store and you never feel it, I think that the real element is very important. But I think where, for me, it can reduce so much back and forth and so much waste, so that maybe the swatch that you actually get sent in real, you've already been through your whole digital library to get to that point where you think you're pretty certain. Maybe you get 2 swatches rather than 20 swatch books get sent all to the different offices. You then go this, and then you go, well, then I want this, and it comes back again in another swatch. And I think that where the 3D rendering of swatches can reduce time. We can't fly around to fabric trade shows at the moment. Almost, I think what's really interesting, we went actually back into our office last week to collect some things, and I saw a pile of swatches that that used to be hanging, and I saw them and I thought, they look really out of date. And I was like, this is 6 months and they look out of date, because now I'm so used to seeing digital renders of things, or we're working so much more digitally ourselves as an organization. So I think that really the last 6 months will have catapulted a lot of businesses into that.
And it forced the hand, right? Many of you out there probably, this does resonate with, you're very comfortable sourcing digitally, right? And working with platforms like SupplyCompass and Queen of Raw, but it also, for those who were, hesitant or resisting this, it force the hand. You can't physically go to your garment district right now, New York or California, around the world, and touch and feel things, or maybe you can, but it's slowly coming back. But what did you do? And we actually saw a huge uptick in just our organic traffic and in the commerce sales we were doing every day, because people still need to, do their job and do their creations and make something. And how else are you going to be able to do it? And so many people are doing such incredible things in this space. And when it comes to sustainability, but for so long, I feel like, like that S word, sustainability, that means so many things, we didn't know how to talk about it. right? And I'm sure you see this too, like at the core, how do we in B2B or B2C talk about the good things that we're doing? And, you kind of get afraid a little bit if you put it out there, if there was a little mistake or someone questions and challenges you on it, you're going to be blown up in the press and the news and it'd be damaging. So you don't talk about it at all. And I think another good thing that we're seeing, and I'm sure you're seeing it as well, and what we're going through right now is that there is this openness and willingness to talk about these things and starting to be a common language and vernacular around what you're doing. For us in our software and tools, we do spend a lot of time with impact analysis because we wanted to give our community a way to talk about these things. And so we leverage some very awesome tools like the HIG Index by the Sustainable Apparel Coalition and others who we partner with, the United Nations, with MIT, to be able to map all the actions that you take across Queen of Raw to certain standards. So we can give you that report after you buy and or sell and tell you that you just saved this amount of water, toxins, energy, and dollars. And you know with certainty what you can share and tell to your stakeholders and to your end customers who do care. And we also now can map it to the United Nations SDGs to tell you how you improved on SDG 6 clean water, or, and I think that again, talking about partnerships, that kind of connectivity and support gives us a language and a way to talk about this and support each other. And, have you done in terms of kind of what you're seeing with your community and impact analysis, talking about the sustainable work they're doing with you and how important that is to what their business and their community?
Definitely. And I think for us, because I probably didn't frame this right at the start about what SupplyCompass is, but we're a production platform for those who don't know. And so we are really we're a part workflow software from start to finish. So it's a product development through to the kind of delivery of your goods. So we're not just working with fabrics, we're working with trims, components, we're very the body of our platform is really around tech pack creation, sampling, approvals, fit, feedback log. It's got a marketplace of manufacturers and suppliers joined to it. So for us, impact, calculating impact is a complex task because we're dealing with many, many different elements within a product over a period of time from different locations for many different brands. So for us, it's a journey. And our first step of our journey was first to launch the platform. We're in stage 2, which is get all brands and manufacturers using the SupplyCompass platform fully, because then if everyone is using that fully from the start to finish, like a kind of conventional PLM software, then measuring impact, only then can we have accurate information. Otherwise there is a little bit of, you have to do guesswork, and ultimately, until we put out scores, we won't put out scores until we have kind of authenticated information. So for us, it's a journey. And I think it's really important on this sustainability journey to say, we're not there yet, or we're not perfect, we can't do these things yet, but this is where we want to get to, and this is how we're going to get there. So yeah, that's where we're at. But I'm excited for the first brand that we start working with Queen of Raw to be using your QR code with your blockchain technology and being able to trace the story with our supply chains in your fabric would be really cool.
We are as well. And, of course, we started in fabrics. It's obviously a huge portion in design of the garment and the material, and that where a lot of the pain was felt. But this problem of waste, you're right, it applies to the trims and all the notions, all these appliques in different parts of the garment. And, we called ourselves Queen of Raw because I think ultimately this applies across raw material categories and around the world. So when you and, everyone out there tell us what you need and what you want in Deadstock, we're really excited to go find it and to support it. And so I think that's ultimately where we can go. And it's exciting to think about, how textiles, it's not just for fashion, although that's why we're here today in a great part, but it also gets used in interior design, automotive, aviation, electronics, and to be able to share resources with each other. And, for anyone out there too, if as you do something with SupplyCompass, if for any reason there is a little bit of waste, which inevitably happens, we understand that, turn around and resell it back on Queen of Raw's platform, and we have all the data about it. And I think that again is where this collaboration and community means so much.
Totally. Now, there's one more question here, and I'm actually asking this one because I'm also really interested to know as you go ahead. I mean, I know we've talked about this before, but we've got a question from India saying, I'm curious to learn how the factories and mills in a country like India, in brackets, disorganized and fragmented markets, have responded to the Queen of Raw proposition for their Deadstock. This, just a side note, 70% of our network and supply base is in India and half our company is based in Hyderabad and Delhi. So for us, the Deadstock conversation, this is part of our, you know, a partnership with Stephanie, is to also support that growth in India as well.
Yeah, it is true. Not everywhere in the world is going to be as digitally connected and technology savvy as others. And that's why we built what we built and the way we built it. It is very nimble, and you don't need to know anything about technology in order to be able to use it. So with our partners who may not have an ERP or inventory management system, we take those 5, 10, 15 CSV files from different departments with handwritten notes. We can actually pull all of them into our system and start to flag where there are errors, questions, or issues that we need to resolve with them. So however they're currently holding the data, we will bring it in from those touch points, and then we can start to correct it, verify it, and clean it up. That is part of the tools of what we built, and we're here to handhold, support, and help in any way through the process. Before COVID, we can actually send a team to go do photography and product uploading and verification of some of this stuff. We will see post-COVID what goes on, but there are a lot of ways we can do it without. We actually have an app on your phone now where you can, in the factory or the warehouse, take a picture if they have a phone, drag and drop, and post it for us to verify the information. So a lot of different ways and touch points to be able to help. At some point, hopefully they all want to start looking at this issue of waste. It doesn't mean overnight we need to do the whole warehouse, right? Or mill, but let's start with 10, 100, whatever SKUs, and start and grow from there. And by the way, this isn't just about sustainability for people and planet, it's also about profit. So as they free up that costly warehouse space, and as they make money selling this waste that otherwise would be burned to landfill, they can take that money and put it back into their company and their supply chain and continue to support and digitize some parts of it as they grow with an eye towards the future supply chain, which we know is going to be more on demand, more local, more sustainable. And so how can we support them in where they are today to get to thrive tomorrow?
Great. So one more thing, actually, because I just saw this question. I forgot to ask it myself during the 3D sampling conversation, but sampling with Deadstock, can you buy sample yardage, or do you just have to commit upfront? You can do that.
No, absolutely. You can buy, in most of our stuff, you can buy a yard, have it tomorrow. You do have to pay for the yard, but you can sample it from there. Or if you don't like it, which fortunately doesn't happen often, if at all, you can turn around and resell it in like kind. So there, hopefully at the end of the day, there isn't much of a cost or outset for you, and it's more efficient than the traditional small little square and sample and swatch. So we find that, there's a lot of value in doing it that way, and it's very quick and easy. I think in the future, as some of these tools get better, the whole idea of swatching and sampling and prototyping will only get better and quicker and easier and more efficient for you. But, always happy to hear what works well for you and, what your pain points are. And look, there are a lot of tools and ways we can solve them with technology. We just need to know and understand what are your challenges. And for so long, I think the biggest challenge with a lot of the sustainability movement has been around the focus on people and planet, which it very much is, but that it automatically cost people more to do. And it was hard. You may care so much, but you're a company. You got a bottom and top line and stakeholders to report to and a business to run. So it has to all be sustainably, economically too, right? It has to make economic sense. And I think that's some of what's cool about Deadstock is it offers you the ability to do that while also at a steep discount that can improve your bottom and top line.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, something that we really is baked into the origins of SupplyCompass was that, you can be more efficient as a business, and you can like you've shown that you can cut that much, you can make that much money just in your fabric that's unsold sitting in a warehouse. Imagine if you look at every single area of business, you think, how can we be more sustainable here? How can we be more efficient? We, for example, our platform, you can track every single sample you've ever requested. A lot of brands don't even have that data to say, oh, I actually ordered 5,000 samples for that one collection last year in that factory. What about this year? We target reducing that by half. Great. The impact of reducing that sample amount can be huge.
Huge. And you're right. And I should clarify too, this isn't just about buying and selling waste. You're right. It's about the future eye to intelligently minimizing it and be more efficient. So we actually ended up building into our platform an ROI calculator. So you can see the amount of money you've saved and made by buying and selling, but also to your point, exactly, by not shipping all over the world, by saving in time and labor and resources. All of this starts to get quantified into our impact. And then it becomes even more valuable. Although waste is valuable in and of itself, it becomes exponential in what you can report on your savings.
Totally. It's just exciting. I feel like, I mean, this is maybe the last question we'll end on, and this can be a joint musing, but really the next 5 years, what do you think the next 5 years looks like for, not just for Queen of Raw, but for, beyond in terms of the technology space within supply chains?
We are at such a tipping point, and so many people have been so scared and so nervous, right, about fashion is dead and the end of the fashion industry. Well, through COVID, there have been a lot of changes, but the sale of shirts are up, right? Because we all need a top to wear on Zoom, unless we're going to be nudists. And I may be a nudist at heart, but at the end of the day, we need clothing, right? We need to protect our bodies on some level. We need textiles and clothing and fabric. And so I don't think you're going to see it go away completely. But how we engage with our clothes, what they're made of, when and how we recycle them or resell them at end of life, all of this is where it's shifting and where there's these incredible innovations and opportunities, I think. And I'm a big proponent of the whole circular economy principle in the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. The longer we can keep this stuff in circulation, it's a win-win-win for everyone. So I think, to the point of the future, the power of this tipping point is that fashion is innovating rapidly, and you have the power here, everyone on this call, to be the game changer in that and support that future. One that we kind of touched on is more on demand, local, sustainable, connected. And I think that's where we're going and what we can all be a part of. Yeah. What are you thinking? What are you seeing?
It's a great question. I think for me, it's been an incredibly challenging time for so many businesses, factories and suppliers more than anyone. And I think, we sit in the middle of both sides, and I would be ignorant to say it hasn't been tough, but I think that what I'm sensing now is those businesses who, and from both sides, from a supply chain, but also a brand side, where there is the realization that we're not going back to the old way, because this is a new era we're entering into, and if you don't shake things up, you will be left behind. So I'm excited by the shift in mindset that is happening at such a pace, because no one can afford to not shift in that mindset. And we're in the middle of this is a kind of crazy, uncomfortable, but also exciting period where we're reformulating what it could look like. And I think, obviously there's bigger questions around consumption, which obviously, that's a different conversation altogether about a capitalist model, but we don't need to get into that today. But I think really what we've touched on today is the need to digitalize every aspect, but it doesn't mean doing it all at once, starting bit by bit and having those conversations internally in your organization and saying, where should we start? Let's not get intimidated by it. If someone had said to me, this is what you're going to be doing in 4 years' time, I would have been terrified. But because I've done it bit by bit, I feel comfortable in what I'm achieving and what we're achieving as a business. So I think it's, be ambitious, but also you don't just bite off more than you can chew at the start.
You're quite right. And just be willing and open to thinking differently, right? Thinking of waste, what's around you as a value and a resource, and thinking of all of what's going on in this world. And we know it is a mess, but how it can connect us all here on Zoom, around the world and otherwise, and how we can innovate and build the better tomorrow for our children and future generations, which, as damaging as fashion is to the environment in the world, that also means it literally has the power to solve some of these world problems if we come together. And I think that's where we're at and why we're working together.
There's been, I think, even though people who are still in jobs, everyone's working harder than ever, but there has been a slowdown, and you touched on that, is that we are reflecting for the first time. The fashion industry was moving at 100 miles an hour, and particularly at the start of lockdown, there was this taking stock of what's going on around. And I think my message is to anyone is experiment with new things, because you don't know where it will take you. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. Drop that thing, try something else. But there's so many exciting solutions that are cropping up, and it's about finding the one that works for you and your business. And that's it. It's bang on 6. It's bang on 6. 6 UK time. What time is it with you?
It's about to be 1 p.m. in New York, but thank you so much for the opportunity. We're so excited to be doing this together and to help support everyone out there in any way. We're here and we can change the world.
Yes, I love that. We'll end on that. I can't. So there's more questions I can see. We will follow up those answers in Insta and in an email. So thank you everyone for joining. Please feel free to drop an email to info@SupplyCompass
or Stephanie at queenofraw.com.
Yeah.
I give it out personally, but yeah, anytime we're here to help.
Brilliant. Take care. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.